monitor that throughout the afternoon. But let's head to one of our regular panels, the one we all look forward to. Liberal MP Jason Falinski and Labor MP Patrick Gorman joining me now from our various studios. Gentlemen, thanks very much for your time. Jason Falinski, I'm going to start with you. Now, be honest here. I know you're a straight shooter. How is the economy really travelling?
I am always honest, Tom. Look, I think the economy's travelling well, and we've got a lot of, we've got to keep going to make sure that it keeps travelling in the right direction. We've had 28 years of uninterrupted growth. Most people, in fact, overwhelming majority of Australians are better off today than they were 30 years ago, and that's a good thing.
So the right direction, though, is a slowdown of growth to the extent it's the slowest rate it's been since the GFC?
The point is that we've got growth. I mean, sometimes it grows faster than at other times, but it's continuing to grow. And look, one quarter does not make a summer. So I think one of the interesting things about the interplay between the media and economics is that you want to look at things over a period of time, at least 12 months. And what you don't want to do is just reach conclusions on the basis of one quarter's growth figures. And that's why we'll need to look at this quarter's and next quarter's and see what direction they're heading in. But I think we should all celebrate the fact that we've had 28 years of uninterrupted growth, and we're the only country in the industrialised world that has a record anywhere near that.
Patrick Gorman, I'm sure you won't talk the economy down. You want it going as well as possible?
Well, I think every Australian wants the economy to do well. The challenge for us in public life is to make sure that we're actually putting forward ideas that continue that 28 years. That was a pretty half-hearted defence of the current government's economic credentials by Jason, but I'm not surprised. Jason's an economist. He reads these things carefully. He knows that the economy could be doing better. And indeed, here in Western Australia, some 44% of Australia's exports come out of Western Australia. If you were to rip Western Australia out of the national balance sheet, we would have the evidence of a huge economic challenge on our hands. What I'd like to see is more action to stimulate growth. You had a well-respected economic commentator, Shane Wright, on earlier, talking about possibly some pretty punitive measures on the poor old Reserve Bank governor. I actually believe that we need to see more from the Treasurer. I was surprised to see today some reports they might be looking at some investment supporting policies for the next budget. I've said a number of times, as have many of my colleagues, just a simple one, start with New Start. Get some money back into the economy. If the tax cuts
let's wind back.
Why not do something about New Start?
Labor was going to look at New Start, but Labor was going to put more taxes on the economy. Now, if you'd won and begun that plan, in hindsight, would it have been the right time to do that?
Well, a lot's changed in the 3 months since the election in terms of the economic figures we're seeing. Indeed, many of those policies that you refer to obviously are under our thorough review process, but many of them wouldn't have started had Labor have won the election. So the challenge that we're seeing right now is a challenge that requires action right now. And
yeah, but you begin to try to get them past the Parliament, and that obviously goes into consumer confidence. And it sounds to me, Patrick Gorman, that you perhaps would have had to have had a rethink after the election, even if you'd won.
Well, look, I'll be very honest. What I'm saying is that the government won on a platform. Circumstances have continued to deteriorate. The economy is slowing. What I'd like to see is the government review its plan. The problem with that request is that there's not a plan to review.
Should there be at least a look at the lever, if not a pull on it yet, Jason Falinski, if the September quarter isn't up to scratch, the government willing to budge on more spending, stimulus?
Well, look, Tom, that's always an interesting question. I guess I would make a couple of other points as well to what Pat was saying. The first would be that the quarter that we've just gone through was a quarter in which whose figures were released yesterday, is the quarter in which there was an election to be held. There were certain expectations baked into that quarter about the outcome of the election, which did not turn out to be the case. People were obviously making spending and investment decisions on the basis of what they thought was going to happen in the future and the policies that the Labor Party had announced. Right. I think that every government needs to keep...
It's all Labor's fault. It's all Labor's fault.
Well, not all Labor's fault, Patrick. That's unfair. You shouldn't be so harsh on yourself.
It sounds a bit like you're saying it's Labor's fault, but it won't be able to be in the next quarter. Look, I do want to get to some other topics, so I know you're regulars, gentlemen, so that's the beauty of this. We'll talk once the September quarter's out as well. This union bill, though, the government is trying to get through, support is building from the crossbench, and Rex Patrick wants to remove the ability of a minister to be able to lodge an application to deregister a union. This is all part of the union crackdown. Would this make Labor more likely to support it, Patrick Gorman, a pretty key part removed?
No, look, I think what we've seen is that Senator Patrick has identified that he's unable to support the bill in its current form. I believe that's because it's a bad bill. Labor's been very clear on this. We're not going to change our position. I don't think some minor amendments from the upper house is going to lead to any change in Labor's position. We believe it's unnecessary, and we believe it targets unions for doing the job that they are there to do for their members.
It also targets them, though, for illegal activity. I mean, if this were passed and, for example, John Setka transgressed in some way in the future, he'd be easier to be gotten rid of, wouldn't he?
Well, look, Mr Setka is an outlier of the union movement, and I think that's a really important point to make, is that the sort of behaviour you see from him, behaviour that I don't believe is acceptable, is not the behaviour of the vast majority of the union movement. So even Senator Patrick himself said it would be wrong to build a piece of legislation based around one individual.
Yes, he did say that. This legislation, if it gets through, Jason Falinski, it does create a harsher environment for unions compared to business, does it not?
No, it does not. In fact, it probably takes registered organisations to within, I don't know, 15% of what a company director's obligations are and the penalties that they face. So if that's your argument, Tom, allow me to say the coalition would be very happy. The coalition would be very happy to subject registered organisations, both employee and employer organisations, to the corporations.
The key thing, though, it does is that I would argue is harsher about this is being able to deregister a union. So let's walk through it on the other side. If it applied to a company, if a board member of a bank, for example, did something illegal, someone, an interested party, could take an action at court to get the company wound up. So let's say, theoretically, someone on the Westpac board does something, bang, the bank could be gone. That can't happen now.
ASIC and APRA can both do those things now.
What, wind up the whole bank because of the action of one board member?
They can wind up. APRA can remove a ADI licence from any financial institution in Australia if they believe that there is dishonest and, I guess, corrupt behaviour occurring in the management or at board level. And under the Banking Executive Accountability Regime, commonly known as BEAR, it can do that up to 7 years after that person has left the financial institution.
For the actions of one person,
if you want to apply those laws, to registered organisations, I'm very comfortable doing that. And I don't know what Christian Porter's view is, and I shouldn't make government policy up on the spot, but I don't think that anyone in the government would be that uncomfortable with applying corporations law and the accountability regime we have for companies and company directors to register.
Does it ever happen?
To date, I'm unaware of any organisation that has happened to, but I'm sure if you give me a day, I can confirm that, but I'm sure it has happened. In fact, I'm aware of APRA removing deposit institution licences from several companies and financial brokers over the years, and financial licences and financial service licences from all sorts of people. It bans directors all the time. They're companies.
Big companies?
And it bans directors all the time. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
It has stopped companies from carrying on to
between banning one director. There's a difference between banning one director and closing
and winding up the company.
Entire organisation.
Yeah, it has removed. So ASIC and I believe APRA as well have removed on several occasions the capacity of a company to continue lending and taking deposits.
All right.
I want to confirm that.
Well, you've got some homework,
that,
Jason Falinski. We'll get some names. You might tweet them out to me and Patrick, and we'll see what size they are and delve into that. Very good.
Please do.
Now, the Kmart decision, let's stay in the union area. This appears to be another case, Patrick Gorman, of a union, according to the Workplace Tribunal, negotiating a deal worse for workers but helping the union get those workers into a superannuation fund of the union's choice, and the shoppies have failed its workers here. Would you agree?
Well, I think the first point to make when it comes to any agreement is that it's an agreement between two parties, the employer and the employees. So I think to lay the entirety of the blame at the SDA is wrong, just in terms of the process.
Well, the company will just say yes if they like the deal, won't they?
This is also what Fair Work should be doing, reviewing the agreements. It would be a poor system if every single agreement that went to Fair Work was just rubber stamped and went through. This is the process that was intended when Fair Work was created. This is the process by which every enterprise agreement should go through. And when we talk about better off overall tests, these are the sort of tests that the Liberal Party at various times and some of the backbench fringe groups have argued shouldn't exist at all.
Do you still like the boot test, Jason Falinski?
Well, look, I'm a big supporter of fringe groups, as you know. But yeah, I have no objection to the boot test. I think, though, this is a really interesting case because you have 92% of the workforce agreeing to this enterprise agreement and the Fair Work Commission rejecting it on the basis that it was designating or forcing workers to join a particularly industry superannuation fund, which for the first time ever the Fair Work Commission found would deliver lower results and lower returns for those workers in retirement. So at a time when we have industry super arguing for higher super guarantees and it's so attached to these enterprise agreements, and you have the Fair Work Commission saying, look, even if you get a 92% of people supporting it, we're not going to vote for, we're not going to authorise it. This is a really interesting dynamic that's playing out in our industrial relations and superannuation system at the moment.
Even if the Kmart workers might not be hugging coalition employees and coalition MPs given penalty rates, but look, you can just accept that as a comment.
Well, you had to add that, didn't you?
I did, contractually obliged. Hey, we're nearly out of time. Patrick Gorman, I know you wanted to talk Brexit. Why don't you just give me a 30-second spiel? Where's it all at? What's your summary?
Does that mean I get 15?
Yeah, I think probably need about 30 minutes to even start to decode where it's all up to. It does seem like quite a mess. I mean, the reality is Australia has passed more legislation to prepare the UK for Brexit than the United Kingdom itself. I hope, Jason and I, in terms of fringe groups, Jason and I are both Republicans. Maybe there's a chance that Australia can get out of the UK quicker than the UK can get out of the EU.
Here.
15 seconds. Here. Oh, there you go. Even shorter. Jason Falinski, Patrick Gorman.
Thank you, Tom.
Always
Thanks,
a pleasure.
Pat.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
See you next.
Resources Minister Matt Canavan says Australia should look to develop its onshore oil resources amid rising global insecurity. The minister was at